I'm delighted to welcome Currie George from Everledger to our webinar today, a very special guest. I was dreaming of having Everledger with us because indeed this company is the pioneer, probably the first, definitely the most prominent one with blockchain technology in mining business. Currie is joining us from sunny San Francisco. Please go ahead, Currie.
So great to be here. Thank you so much for inviting us. It's a pleasure. My name's Currie George again. I'm the Vice President and Head of Sustainability at Everledger. That means that I cover not just our product, but also corporate sustainability practices from cloud energy to our volunteering programs and engage with our wonderful team to enable all of those. I'm going to jump into mostly our product today, but at the end, you'll see contact information for myself as well as my colleague in the UK, and you can reach out to us at any time with further questions. So just a quick introduction to Everledger. Our fearless leader and founder, Leanne Kemp, has constantly made sure we keep our mission and our North Star around transparency, trust, and sustainability, as well as amazing customer experiences. You can see that we have a multi-asset, multi-industry platform and focus. We've grown for the last 5+ years from diamonds, which most people have known us for, through and today into mining, metals, as well as circular economy platform. We're across a host of partners, clients, and investors with live product and live blockchain applications. And so let's go into what our technology actually is and what that includes. Again, our value proposition is about more knowledge, more sustainability, more transparency for an overall total package of trust in supply chain and marketplace. We do this, again, across sustainability activities. And like I said, I manage not just our product and product solutions for sustainability applications, but also what we do with our people and planet. And that information is available through our sustainability policy on our website. But let's talk specifically about our product. Our goals are know, show, tell, and sell, and to enable our trust, transparency, and increased impact and sustainability for people and planet across those activities. We do this across a symphony of technologies, not just blockchain and distributed ledger, but artificial intelligence, machine learning, IoT-enabled products and features, intelligent labeling and nanotech, and partnerships and partnership development, whether that be to enable others that have this type of technology to interact with our supply chain partners and data providers and data users, but also to engage with us in terms of impact on the ground. And I'll go into several of those activities. But again, if you look at our solution, for that Evermore, transparency, trust, and sustainability, when you look at what blockchain and distributed ledger enables through guarantees for privacy, security, and permissioned access to specific data, then you look at the data management, data user-enabled insights, and dashboards and downloads, and then to the consumer experience. This is a suite of services and user experiences with data provider engagement that is unique for what the supply chain actually needs. I'll go into a little bit of my experience across the U.S. government, across big customers and clients such as Apple and others, and give my sustainability impact goals along with how that has brought me to work with a technology company to meet those goals for other clients. So if you look at our Everledger platform across sustainability and impact, and we think about mining specifically, mines and mined material doesn't just go to one provider or one supplier or one industry and product. It goes to many different products and product streams. And that's something that a lot of times when you're OEM, electronics OEM, like when I was at Apple, or when you're an automobile provider or jewelry manufacturer or retailer, sometimes you forget that when you're trying to do sustainability due diligence or impact, that the actors you're working with in the upstream have many, many supply chain partners and activities. And so you might feel that your need for reporting is the most important of all, but that actor is being pummeled oftentimes by many different requests for different types of standards, different types of reports. And as I got into this work across jewelry, electronics, and then in other materials that are not mined materials, but actually other, soft goods and natural goods, what we found was that this kind of request actually causes problems for transparency because of the over engagement and just inefficiency of the process. So that's one of the reasons I came to Everledger, because I saw that if I was going to have further impact in the sustainability space, we had to be smarter about it. Blockchain provides that opportunity, and with distributed ledger technology being enabled across multiple types of data sources, not just from a miner or a refiner for transactional data for transparency, but the compliance data and sustainability impact data, the verification data, and so on across that also will be coupled to make traceability or chain of custody information valuable for all the customers and practices that need to be verified across the chain. So our approach is to enable supply chain tracking, measurements being coupled with those supply chain actors and that type of product transformation across the chain. The verification data, audits, different types of data triangulation that would sometimes be done in a more manual process, we can enable in a much more effective and machine-based process. And then ultimately, in terms of impact on the ground, we can work with measurements and verifications to determine where to have impact, which actors to have impact on, so that it's localized to the region or the issue area, and so on. So we'll go into more of these details through it. But here's just some quick screenshots of our product and how it looks in practice, from supply chain tracking to impact and connecting to partners on the ground. Again, the goal here when we're looking at ensuring robustness, improving data insights, and making it easy for users to provide and interact to assess and improve positive behavior, we believe that technology can provide critical links and connections across the board for this. And we believe that some of the key impacts, and I'll go into some numbers around each one of these, is that we can help to improve accurate product claims at different transformation points across the chain, as well as at the end of the chain, efficient reporting, and then improved conservation, environmental impact, and economic inclusion. So let's give an example. Efficient reporting around human rights due diligence. Many of us have seen a lot of increased human rights legislation and pending legislation across the world and across many regions. But this becomes complicated in terms of how you actually report and what the regimes are. At the bottom, I list that most of the legislation that's listed here, as well as pending legislation, will reference things like OECD guidelines on due diligence, as well as UN guiding principles and others. So there are some commonalities, and what we look at is how do we create technology that will enable that reporting regardless of the final steps and nuances, and that we enable data users and data providers to issue and permission the relevant details and data around that accordingly. So we have what we call product passports. Now this is what an end consumer might see in terms of being able to visualize the respective product with the evidence and due diligence around it. And this ultimately goes across all actors, because each one of what we refer to as badges or issue area criteria compliance areas, they would drill down and be able to find the relevant information around that. This is really critical across industries. I'm going to give a few examples in jewelry, electronics, and automotive, just because of the mineral focus here. But we've seen since 2001 increased requirements and specific codes and details that are necessary to meet jewelry due diligence. And if we go to an example of how that might look, we might see origins. And so in the diamond world, Kimberly process is a critical regime and scheme for managing risk in regarding conflict diamonds and blood diamond issues. What we see is that we can ingest Kimberly process certificates to verify origins associated with the product level claims. This is for one of our clients and how they are reporting different origins. And then we can give them, as a retailer, specific dashboards, as well as help the supplier or the midstream manufacturer be able to ingest their documents and due diligence effectively, efficiently, and accurately. They have to do a number of activities to verify, they meaning the manufacturer as well as the retailer, to make sure that they're accurately reporting this to the end consumer. There's a lot of different types of consumer protections acts out there. In the United States, the FTC has the green guidelines and consumer claims. And so there are really specific regimes that we need to be following. And so we help them to actually do this triangulation to make sure that they're having legal minimums, but then also accuracy of claims. And let's talk about product level claims. A lot of times we've avoided product level claims because of the sensitivity and the potential for missing it. But when you start doing machine-based artificial intelligence, the reasonableness of what you're doing is increased so drastically, taking out human error elements or identifying human error elements much more effectively, that you're able to make these claims with more confidence and reliability, and bake in specific mitigation measures if there were to be something missed. For example, if a document was too blurred to read, you'd be able to capture that and have a human eye on it. So just for an example, reviewing 41,000 documents, we were able to cleanly identify the specific 25 that had issues that would have caused accuracy issues in the actual product level claim. So that's a 0.0000006% level of accuracy that would have otherwise gone unnoticed, and that's the kind of confidence that can be enabled in this. Other types of things is efficient compliance across different reporting schemes and bringing in audits. This is a number of ones that affect mineral markets and across gold, cobalt, steel, aluminum, etc. And so we've brought in and we're able to ingest those different types of reports and apply different types of reading technologies so that they can be ingested automatically. This is an example from Apple standards of how many different standards they accept. And on the right is an example of from the Copper Mark's work with the Responsible Minerals Initiative, which a good percentage of the world's electronics and automotive companies are participating in, just how we would ingest their comparison and equivalencies of different audits. And we're able to, by applying our review processes, go from what maybe someone, if you have a compliance team, they might be able to review 200 of these reports per day through manual processing. Maybe they have some basic Excel, document downloads or CSV downloads. By our automated processes, we can do over 10,000 per day. And that's coupling with the permission of blockchain and others, the level of accuracy, actual time stamping and continuous development becomes a huge opportunity for many companies across the supply chain. So again, we ingest this different types of human rights data. We're able to do this across actors. Just applying machine learning, taking in 900 reports could be 20 minutes, and then 1,500 PDF reports we're able to ingest, read, and apply to the blockchain actors in less than 2.5 hours. These are all just early stage kind of numbers, but this is the kind of impact that we can see long term. I'm going to break off into just one example really quickly to talk about metric-based reporting, because this is something that it gets more complicated, and especially when we talk about issues in greenhouse gas reporting, which becomes a bigger and bigger issue with the EU taxonomy legislation coming out and others. And so you're seeing a lot of that. For the mining market, you're usually falling into scope 3 for indirect emissions for retailers and downstream companies that have to report on this. And they are getting more and more influenced by legislation to focus on scope 3. And so this is you're going to see more and more requests, but they're going to be clumsy, particularly when you see how sensitive it is for them to have the numbers of emissions being 5.5 times higher in the upstream than when they're looking at their scope 1 and scope 2. So as they're pushed to scope 3, it's going to be more complicated to get that information and to report it efficiently and effectively. So we've done some testing on this and how we could do this and apply these numbers more efficiently to our downstream clients from our upstream clients. And so we took one model. There's several models for how you measure greenhouse gas, but we took the GREET model from the Argonne National Laboratory, applied the specific coefficient factors, and then we made a basic scorecard for where data is available, where it's not, how difficult it is to find. And what we would do is being able to scale that to scope 3. We would do what we do with provenance data, origin data, compliance data, and take in that different data and report it out as such to our different clients. By doing this, we believe that we'll be able to drastically reduce assurance costs in the GHG sustainability reporting activities, because we would have already triangulated this data and been able to take in even utilities bills, direct IoT meter enabled meters data, and do this in real time so that you're not waiting to end of year to be able to report this out when you have clients asking for this every quarter to 6 months. And by doing this, we think we'll be able to save hundreds of hours by just doing one supply chain of one material type with just a handful of actors at each supply chain. It was over 40 hours of work, plus about $6,000 of reports that you'd have to purchase to just get one level of a cobalt supply chain. And think of, if you're doing the battery, a downstream consumer has many supply chains. So they're going to feel rushed. They're going to look at this from a prohibitive cost activity. But if the mining market and minerals market can enable this more efficiently, we're going to see a drastic improvement in sourcing and search activities for new purchasing. And you're going to see a much better outlook on how people look at your materials overall. So just seamless real-time data, enabling consumers as well as retailers and midstream buyers to get the data they need across the board. And then finally, that enabling money to go to the impact that we need. Mining, as well as many activities, aren't going to be inherently able to be carbon neutral. And so how do we connect to actors that might have impact? We did a pilot with one actor, Carbon Fund, and how could we connect multiple actors to their approved and already audited carbon offset activities? And what if multiple actors across the chain were actually impacting that offset because they are using that material? You'll see a lot of shipping companies like FedEx, they have a shared model for offsetting. And through blockchain, we could enable that shared model for offsetting, since everyone's benefiting from the material that's been extracted, to do the offset directly across the chain. And that's something that can be enabled through blockchain because of the tracking and traceability, but then also for the impact going back to the source of the extraction. And finally, just a couple minutes on further incentivizing impact. Because there's a lot of issues around large-scale mining and its relationship with artisanal mining, we thought we would also highlight some of the work we've been doing on artisanal mining. And that it's not going away. We know that we need to interact with it more effectively, but a lot of times large-scale mines have the burden or the additional weight of carrying that out, or they're coupled with artisanal mining activities and issues such as child labor and extreme health and safety risks. And what we're trying to do is enable that You can resolve one separately or together with large scale mines, but keep the materials separate for those that have different sourcing requirements. We are already heavily engaged in the gemstone market in artisanal mining. 80% of the world's gemstones are mined with artisanal miners. So we have been engaging across 44 countries, and specifically in 5 countries in sub-Saharan Africa on artisanal mining activities. And we continue to do this because of the livelihood impact, because of the presence in the supply chains we're operating in, and that we want to engage. But we do feel that there is an opportunity for large scale and small scale interaction and positive impact. And so where that's possible, for example, when we see that one of the key problems is artisanal mining occurs where there aren't enough alternative livelihoods or positive livelihoods, and that we have seen in the example in Congo, the opportunity to transition irresponsible artisanal mining to either responsible mining that sometimes is coupled with large-scale miners where they have sites dedicated or approved artisanal mining sites, or to other alternative livelihoods. And oftentimes large-scale mines as well as other actors in the supply chains want to contribute jointly to this. And we're providing opportunities for that combining of resources across the supply chain as well as in the upstream. And that where mining companies already have a lot of programs trying to contribute to the mining community, could we help bolster that, enable that, and scale those activities with those change organizations you probably are already working with? Well, one example that we have is we have give back programs. Sometimes this is to plus up producer payments, so for small scale farmers, or in this case could be artisanal miners, or directly to the change makers on the ground for those activities. And in one case, when we were working with collection of batteries, there are opportunities to give rewards to those customers, and those rewards could actually be impact credits dedicated to these impacts on the ground. So a twofold impact for a consumer to have engagement positively with a material and a material end of life, so it's recycled, but then also to know that they are having positive impact on the ground. So overall, we have low-cost production identification, low-cost product identification, and permission distribution of stakeholder data. So through a symphony of technologies, we believe we'll be able to have improved conservation, efficient reporting, and accurate claims for an overall improvement in issues around sustainable development goals, as well as marketplace transactions. We know that technology can't do it alone, but with your support and many of the stakeholders on this call and others, we can really address the most challenging problems of our time. And again, really appreciate your time. Feel free to contact us in the future, and hope we can work together more effectively for these solutions going forward.
Thank you very much, Currie. That's a great presentation, very clear, very full of interesting information and thoughts, and very beautifully made too. I will have to comment on the last part that you touched with our artisanal mining. Actually, surprisingly, I hear a lot about it. I think there is a wave of interest and awareness of it and understanding. So I do talk a lot to people who are, looking into it, trying to, help the miners, and it is really something that mining industry does need to address, but it's a very complex issue. I'm a big scale miner. I worked with the mostly, industrial scale mines. But it definitely something that we as people closest to the ground really need to help address. So that's definitely important. And I think it's great that you're working on it. I'm sure there will be a lot of interest because quite a few of our audience are working with organizations that try and help artisanal miners. But on the other, points that you touched, I would like to comment. You did mention the word Excel, and there was a lot of mentioning of the paper documents. And I think this is, that our reality is that we are looking at such, great potential that, what you mentioned, IoT and artificial intelligence, and it's happening. but so much of our industry is sitting back in paper documents and Excel spreadsheets. So it's encouraging to hear from you that despite that, we still can, can and do move ahead.
Absolutely. I think just a little bit more context on my background. I am one of those people that have gone on the ground and gone through hundreds, if not thousands of documents for days at a time to put together the story of, oh, wow, this is a year-long transaction document ledger that just wasn't maintained well, or because of the buyers that you're working with, there's no way to have done it. And so we're doing this so it's iterative. We know there's an ecosystem development, and it's not to say bad, good. Almost nothing is purely bad or good. It's almost always in development. It's always an iterative process. And what I'm trying to do, and one of the slides earlier, you saw kind of a scorecard for how robust is the data? What are we working with? And what I'm trying to do is communicate and translate effectively to downstream clients what's reasonable. This is what's reasonable right now to ask for. And we're coming up, and we would love to work with the mining industry to come up with the right ways to say, this is generally where the industry's at. Don't ask this, because you're not going to get it. You might actually encourage falsification. Instead, ask this, but give timeframes to get there. Theory, ask for this where it's reasonable, and just keep nudging forward so we can all move together. I am a big believer in rising of all boats, and we can get there if we meet together. And on the artisanal mining front, I think there's been far too much pitting against each other in the large scale mine and artisanal mining industry. And large scale miners I have seen globally do amazing things for mining communities. So if I'm able to actually scale some of those positive things, as opposed to encouraging a divergence between it, I think large scale miners probably have a better view of real impacts that could be had in their learnings and take those forward. So yeah, would definitely encourage those conversations. And
maybe we will have a separate webinar just to discuss that, and different people's experiences on that, because it is a topic on which many are very passionate.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you very much, and we'll speak again.